Canada's immigration backlog has finally fallen below 1 million applications, marking an important symbolic shift after remaining above that level for 5 straight months. According to the latest update to Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada's official application inventory dashboard, the total backlog stood at 990,300 as of January 31, 2026. That is down by 24,400 from December, when the backlog stood at just over 1 million. At first glance, that sounds like clear progress, but the deeper numbers show a more complicated picture. The overall decline was driven entirely by temporary residence applications, while permanent residence and citizenship backlogs both continued to rise. In other words, the pressure in the system has not disappeared. It has simply shifted from one area to another. Temporary residence was the biggest reason the total backlog moved lower. That category saw its backlog drop by 33,200 applications, while the overall inventory fell sharply as well. This suggests that fewer new temporary applications are entering the system, and that Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada is finalizing more of these files. Reduced intake policies for international students and temporary foreign workers appear to be playing a major role in that decline. Even so, the temporary residence backlog rate stayed unchanged, meaning a large share of those files still remain outside service standards. Permanent residence tells a very different story. Instead of improving, the permanent residence backlog rose by 7,800 applications to 535,300. That is now the highest permanent residence backlog recorded since Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada began publishing the data in its current format. More than half of all permanent residence applications are now exceeding service standards. The inventory also grew significantly, which suggests that new applications are entering the system faster than the department can finalize them. This growing pressure is especially important for economic immigration streams. Express Entry showed signs of renewed backlog pressure, with Canadian Experience Class and Federal Skilled Worker Program queues both growing. Provincial nominee applications linked to Express Entry also remained heavily backlogged. Family sponsorship, however, continued to be the most stable permanent residence category, with projected backlog levels holding relatively steady. Citizenship also moved higher again. The citizenship backlog rose for the 8th consecutive month, reaching 60,300 applications. While that increase was smaller than what was seen in permanent residence, it still points to a continuing structural gap between intake and processing capacity. The actual citizenship backlog was slightly better than what Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada had projected, but the upward trend remains intact. January processing volumes also reflect a seasonal slowdown. Permanent residence decisions and new permanent resident landings both came in below their monthly averages from the previous year. Study permit finalizations also dropped sharply. Work permit processing was the main exception, rising well above the recent average and showing that Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada continues to prioritize labor market needs. The key takeaway is that Canada's immigration backlog dropping below 1 million is real and meaningful, but it does not tell the whole story. Temporary residence pressures are easing, yet permanent residence is becoming more strained, and citizenship continues to drift upward. For applicants in 2026, this means wait times will vary sharply depending on the category. The milestone below 1 million may look encouraging, but the real challenge now is whether Canada can stop permanent residence backlogs from worsening in the months ahead.